Hey everyone, welcome to Willow's Whimsy. Thanks so much for stopping by. So I'm kind of giving you my story, and I'm trying to do it from a perspective of mental health rather than go over every little detail and what I did and what it was like. And I'll write a book someday if anyone's interested. Going back over much of this triggers me. I'm shame-based. I've lived my whole life. Well, not in the last 10 years, it really started to change. But really in the last 5, it amped up. So I do still suffer greatly with shame and trying to break the patterns that come with that. But for years I lived from a victimhood, perspective. I'm a victim. I felt sorry for myself. I felt like my story was the worst. It's not by a long shot. But those feelings can come up. I do cry sometimes when I talk about these things. I am an emotional girl, and I probably always will, but it doesn't mean that I'm still living back there, and I try to approach these more generically somewhat so that I'm not reliving, if that makes sense. Because I'm good at doing that too. I get stuck in the past a lot as a means of shame and beating myself up for all my choices and actions over the years. But there's also a nostalgic piece. And I'm actually going to do a Niece's Many Musings on that because that has kind of caused some problems for me in my life too. So we'll talk about that more in my Niece's Many Musings, which I hope to post on Thursday of this week. So I talked about, I think I left off when we got to Minnesota the second time and checking out the house and everything, living with my grandparents. So my dad's dad and his adoptive mom. My dad's mom, if you recall, his birth mom passed away when my dad was 14. My dad had me at 20. So in that 6-year period of time, my grandfather had remarried. Anyway, so we didn't call them Grandma and Grandpa. We called them Nana and Boompa. And I'm going to tell this story because it talks a little bit about how I was. And I'm going to let's go through 3rd grade. For the sake of this video. So there was a girl who had the same name as me, first name. And I will never forget, she was on her bike. And we were over by the school, the elementary school that we went to. And she wanted to play or something. And I said, I can't, I got to go home. My Nana wants me to come right home. And she goes, Nana? Nana, Nana, banana. Okay. Kids will do these things. I like to try and think, what would a kid who didn't have borderline personality disorder do? Like a, quote, normal kid. A normal kid might have started crying because their feelings were hurt. A normal kid might have been like, basically, you're kind of a dick and walked away. A kid with borderline personality disorder loses her shit. Because how dare you insult my Nana? And, I didn't beat the crap out of her, but I knocked her down off her back. And of course, I'm sure I got in trouble for it. I'm sure the parents called my Nana and Boompa. From here on out, when I refer to Mom and Dad, I'm referring to Nana and Boompa because of that incident. I didn't want to call them Nana and Boompa, and I had never called my birth parents Mom and Dad. I called them David and Jerry. And so I started calling Nana and Boompa Mom and Dad. And so from that moment on, that's what they were. And thank God for them. God. Can't imagine 2 more patient, loving people. So the one thing that I can tell you ruled me was anger. It was my fuel. It was my fuel. You never knew when I was going to go off. There's a novel by Stephen King called Salem's Lot. And if you're a Stephen King fan, you know He is incredible at character development. And in Salem's Lot, there's a schoolyard bully, and his name is Richie. I don't know if I think Bodden, but he may pronounce it Bowden. You never know what an author, has intended. And he was a big boy, this Richie, and he fancied that the earth shook beneath his feet. And, the other kids would shake and kind of watch what's he doing because they didn't want to be the center of his ire. Now, I was not to that degree of bully. And it wasn't even bullying in the sense, where you tease kids or call them names and torture them. It wasn't that. But if I was mad at you, God, you better be able to run faster than me. And it could be the littlest thing that would set me off into these rages. And when I was in the rages, it wasn't just people I would lash out at. I would cut my nose off to spite my own face. I can't tell you how many times I ransacked my room and broke things I loved, and then the guilt and the shame that would come after. And feeling, when you're that little and you're that out of control, I didn't have the adult ability, right, to look at all this and pick it apart. I just knew how I felt, and I felt angry. But the shame came in, and there was a sense of that being out of control scared me, and I didn't understand it. I just couldn't verbalize that. And so I think anyone in my life at that time would have said, if there was one word to describe me, it was angry, Now, it's funny because on the flip side, I think I am an old soul because my teachers always said to mom and dad, at conferences or whatever, she is a paradox. On the one hand, you've got this anger and very disruptive in class at times, right? Depending on what kind of mood I was in. And teachers didn't like me. They didn't understand me. I wish more people, I think we're changing and teachers are starting to understand. But back then, if you were a difficult kid, it meant you were a bad kid. And there were most of the teachers, I'll mention as we go through all this, some of the good ones that stood out and were amazing and made a huge difference in my life. But yeah, so they would say, she's volatile, she's all the negative things, right? But then they would say, on the other hand, she comprehends sorrow and pain of others and has empathy for the underdog in a way that most children do not. And they said that I was like a little adult. One teacher even had said to me, and then she kind of realized what she was doing and stopped, was like, I feel like I can say anything to you. And I was 8 years old. So I was precocious too. I started reading at about 8, and I didn't read kids' books. One of the first novels I read was Dracula. I've been obsessed with vampires and werewolves ever since. And so some of the things I would read, I didn't understand, sexual things that had sexual overtones or whatever gave me a feeling of something, but I didn't really understand it, But my point is I was precocious and I read a lot and I was interested also in things I probably shouldn't have been. I just was kind of a wild kid. I stole from my friends. There was a girl down the block who had every Barbie doll imaginable, and I was jealous. I almost always got caught. Her mom, Betty, was so funny. She would call, and she would be like, Denise, I think Denise took one of Dawn's Barbie dolls or whatever, and I'd have to bring it back. I'd have to do the walk of shame, and here you go. And there was something else I was going to say. Oh, yes. So I mentioned before, I was attention seeking. And I remember the first day getting to Minnesota and in the house. And I remember walking down the block and the kids kind of came out to, check me out and see what I was about. And my sister may have been with me. And I remember like kicking my tennis shoe up really high in the air and being like swearing, like, huh. Like I thought that was the way to get attention or have other kids see me as cool. And that is the first time I also remember the feeling of comparing my insides to the outsides of others. So there was a girl, Dawn. She had a brother, Dean and Denise. And Dawn was the oldest of the three. And she had this hair that went down almost to her butt. And it was naturally curly and beautiful and shiny. And I just remember being so jealous of that hair. And later on, I became friends with a girl named Kirsten. And we're going to talk about her in the next video. She's one of my lifelong friends. And we didn't always get along. And we got into lots of shenanigans and funniness, but trouble. But we'll go into that later. But I remember it was third grade and I said that's what I would go to. Just being jealous of her. And I was a chubby little kid. It breaks my heart, you guys. I definitely started using food as comfort way back then. It offset the anger, but it offset so many things. I remember feeling like I weighed 800 pounds when I compared myself to the other girls. And some of the boys, did tease me and call me fat. And I wasn't. You guys, I look at the pictures now, I had a little bit of baby pudge on me. I was not fat. The shame of being me was already there. And I never, ever measured up. And I'm going to tell you a story and end it because I don't like these videos to go too long. You get the gist that if you said no to me, if you disagreed, if you said something I didn't like, if you did something I didn't like, I lashed out physically. And God help you. And you better be able to run faster than me. Because I did pound on some kids. And I did cause damage. And there was shame about that too. And there was shame that none of the parents liked me or wanted me around their kids. And it wasn't like that 100% of the time. There were some parents who knew that it was deeper than that. And they were kind to me. They had to protect their kids, but they were kind to me. In second grade, there was a boy. He ended up passing away in fourth grade, the summer after fourth grade. His name was Brian, and for some reason, in second grade, he singled me out. You want to talk bullying? Every day when I got to school, he would punch me in the stomach and say he had to do it because it made him feel better. He would break my pencils. If he overheard me in class saying, "Oh, I brought new pencils," he would take them and break them. He threatened me constantly. I was in living fear. And he was the only one who brought that out in me. And instead of fighting him, instead of calling his bluff, which I did with everyone else, I was an ass kicker. I was fearless, but with him, I became a victim. And it was kind of like trying to suck up to him no matter what to get his approval. That was a direct reaction to the abandonment that I went through. I just didn't know it then. And I didn't know it was going to be a signal of things to come. Long story short, I kind of sold my soul to him. He wanted me, I caught him crying after school one day because his kite got caught in a tree and he saw me. And he threatened me because he was afraid I was going to tell the kids at school. And so he made me take all my clothes off. He got all the neighborhood boys and he made me take my clothes off in front of all of them. and threw my dress in the creek. I had to ride my bike home naked. He did that because he could hold that over my head. And I wouldn't dare tell anybody. I saw him crying. And I never did tell anyone, you know? I never did. He did end up coming out with it, and that's a story for next time. But I wanted to tell you that, like, that there are so many layers to me and to the choices I've made in my life. But that was the first experience, other than my real dad, my biological dad, David. He never abused me, but like the abandonment caused what I think became willingness to put up with shit from men, okay, that I shouldn't have. And we'll talk about that as we go through. So I'm going to stop there so this doesn't get too long. I told you some of this will make me cry. I just feel sad for the little girl that I was. I wish somebody could have seen through all of this. It was a different time, and we didn't intervene with kids. We just labeled them bad. We punished them, although Mom and Dad really didn't punish Stacy and I. It is what it is, but I feel bad for that little girl. And if I had a do-over, I don't know if things would be different because I'd be a little girl again. I don't know. Whatever. We don't get do-overs. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you liked this video, if you can relate, please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. Join me on the journey. Comment. Hit the notification bell so you always know when I download new material or videos or whatever. And join me on the journey. Like, I just want to create community and support and love for one another. That's what I want. Thanks, you guys.